Today we have ExpreS2ion Biotech, and here to present the company is CEO Bent Frandsen. Welcome, Bent. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mike. My name is Bent Frandsen. I'm the CEO of ExpreS2ion Biotech, and I represent a company where we want to save lives through making vaccines against the most fatal and life-debilitating diseases around. I have a short presentation. I'll go through it. And first, we have the usual disclaimer. Since we are listed on Nasdaq First North Growth Market in Stockholm, we'll let you read this in details. Just shortly about our company, we have a mission to turn complex proteins into tomorrow's vaccines. And we do this by making a pipeline of high-value assets within infectious diseases and oncology. We have a very strong IP portfolio with patent expiry beyond 2040, and we are targeting unmet medical needs in very large markets. We have very strong vaccine technologies that support us in our endeavors. We have a vaccine production technology, which we have made since we started our operations back in 2010. We've made more than 500 proteins using this for various clients and partnerships over the years. We address the global vaccine market, which is valued more than $200 billion now, which is a six-fold increase compared to only 5 years ago. And that's obviously driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is also a field where we operate in. We have a clinical phase 3 stage COVID-19 vaccine asset in our hand. It's being sponsored by Bavarian Nordic, the exclusive licensee, and we expect results from this in the middle of 2023, and it's going towards commercial launch in 2024. Our business model is twofold. We still maintain our contract research organization, which was the basis for the company when we started in 2010. That means we make proteins for clients, which are laboratories around the world, which have a challenge producing the proteins of interest. We can do that in our production technology. We spend most of our time now on developing a novel pipeline of assets, and we do this by pursuing own projects like the breast cancer vaccine project, which we call ES2B-C001, or in partnerships. Recent examples of that is the Evaxion partnership for making a CMV vaccine, and then we have the Bavarian Nordic collaboration in the COVID-19 field. The technologies that we apply, we depict on this slide. To the left side, you see a description of our ExpreS platform. We spell it like this with an S2. It's because we use Drosophila S2 cells as the basis for this unique technology. These are insect cells. They're from fruit fly embryos, and we have patented an improved vector system that can overcome challenges in producing these recombinant proteins. And we apply this technology across all our pipeline assets. To the right side, you see a description of the virus-like particle technology, the VLP technology, which is a very interesting vaccine technology that originates from University of Copenhagen and is placed in a company called AdaptVac, which is a company ExpreS2ion holds a 34% ownership in. The combination of the ExpreS technology and the VLP technology we apply in our two lead assets, namely the COVID-19 project as well as the breast cancer vaccine project. And this is the pipeline as we show it today. It's led by the COVID-19 asset. It's called ABNCoV2. Here we make the SARS-CoV-2 antigens in our ExpreS system and couple it to the VLP technology. And this is fully out-licensed to Bavarian Nordic. Bavarian Nordic sponsors the project going onwards. It's in clinical phase 3 since September 2022, going towards commercial launch here in the near future. The breast cancer vaccine asset, we call it ES2B-C001. Here we make HER2 antigen in our ExpreS system and couple it to the VLP from AdaptVac. This we have in-licensed from AdaptVac. We have very strong preclinical proof of concept on this, and we are on path towards the first clinical trial in 2024. We have recently added an influenza project to our pipeline, the Mucovax project. This is very exciting. It's a collaboration between University of Copenhagen and ExpreS2ion, and it's being funded by a very nice grant that we announced here in March 2023, which is a 70% funding of making this influenza vaccine research, where we aim to make a nasal-delivered universal influenza vaccine. Also, the CMV project I want to highlight. This is a collaboration between ExpreS2ion and a Danish biotech company called Varje, where we join our research expertise to make a novel CMV vaccine. This was announced in December 2022. And then we have a handful of various malaria vaccines, which I will inform you more about in the next time. On the ABNCoV2, the COVID-19 vaccine, this has several important and advantageous features. First of all, we have, both we and Bavarian Nordic have showed a very strong boosting effect across variants of concern. This even goes against the Omicron variant. And more importantly, it has also shown durability across variants of concern. That means there's a potential long-term effect with this vaccine, which is not the case with current vaccines on the market. We see a very high level of protection. There's no need for an adjuvant, which is a common ingredient in most vaccines. Very unusual and very good advantage of this vaccine. And we see it's very stable, even can be handled at room temperature, which is also a strong advantage when you think about the still global scale of this disease. And we have near-term milestones because we also see new durability data coming up here in the spring from Bavarian Nordic. And the phase 3 top-line results we expect in the middle of 2023, as communicated by Bavarian Nordic. And speaking of Bavarian Nordic, the licensing setup between this is such that there is a licensing agreement between AdaptVac and Bavarian Nordic. Bear in mind, AdaptVac, ExpreS2ion owns 34% of this company. AdaptVac, when this license agreement was established, got €4 million upfront. This was 3 years ago. And they are eligible to receive up to €136 million in development and sales milestones. And this is quite near term now, as you can imagine, as well as single to double-digit percentage royalties of Bavarian's revenues. Since there's also ExpreS2ion technology, the ExpreS-made antigens in the COVID-19 vaccine, ExpreS2ion has a license agreement with AdaptVac, which allows us to receive up to €2 million in commercial milestone payments and lower double-digit percentage of AdaptVac's revenues, and still maintaining the 34% ownership of AdaptVac. On the breast cancer vaccine asset, this is addressing a very common cancer, which today leads to more than 600,000 women who die annually. We target the HER2 receptor, which are the case in more than 25% of women being diagnosed with breast cancer. These women are today treated with the standard of care treatment, which is monoclonal antibodies. Known brands are Herceptin and Perjeta, which are sold by Roche, and they generate more than $11 billion in annual sales. There are some drawbacks associated with these treatments. Patients can develop resistance. This happens in 20 to 30% of cases. There's risk, and there's some very cumbersome administration requiring frequent hospital and doctor's visits. And with our vaccine approach, we expect to overcome these drawbacks. We've seen some very nice both in vitro and in vivo data. Here we see data showing that ES2B-C001 can overcome Herceptin resistance. As mentioned, this is what is happening in 20 to 30% of cases. And here we actually see that our vaccine has the potential to overcome this. Also in vivo studies, which we have performed in collaboration with world-known scientists at University of Bologna in their state-of-the-art mice models, we see very strong preclinical proof of concept, as we have announced during 2022. We can see that our vaccine in these animal models can completely block the development of tumors at all, which is very, very interesting. And in fact, these data that we show here are now also in a peer-reviewed scientific article, which was published in November 2022. Lastly, we have some near-term catalysts coming up across our pipeline. With respect to the COVID-19 asset, we are of course dependent on Bavarian Nordic and their progression on the clinical phase 3. As mentioned, we will see the headline results in the middle of 2023, and then Bavarian Nordic has communicated that they expect to initiate a rolling submission to the regulatory authorities, hopefully for a market launch of this asset in 2024, meaning also near-term potential revenues, both to our 34% owned company AdaptVac and ExpreS2ion ourselves. On the breast cancer vaccine asset, we are currently focusing a lot on that. We want to bring it into the first clinical phase 1 study in 2024. We have made the GMP manufacturing scale up and are right now conducting the preclinical safety studies that is required before we can submit the clinical trial application in the beginning of next year. On the influenza side, we are progressing, as I mentioned, which goes for the CMV vaccine as well. And lastly, I didn't get to cover the malaria vaccines that much, but they're also progressing with our collaboration partners at University of Copenhagen and University of Oxford as well. Thank you very much.
Bent, your main asset is the COVID-19 vaccine. The pandemic is still ongoing. However, of course, the trends are positive. Some would say the pandemic is over. However, why is it important that you're developing this vaccine right now?
The demand is still there, especially for a vaccine that may have durable protection, long-term protection. It's true that the pandemic is maybe waning off. It's still a pandemic by the WHO definition. However, it's also more widespread in certain regions of the world. And it may even evolve into an endemic disease, just like we see with influenza. So there will every year be a need for a COVID-19 vaccine. We can address that with the vaccine we are developing, or that our licensee, Bavarian Nordic, they are developing.
Currently, of course, there are already several COVID vaccines out there, quite effective. So how do you fit your vaccine onto the market?
Effective, that's a good word here in this connection, because what you see is protection from the messenger RNA vaccines, which are the dominating COVID-19 vaccines, but they have a very short half-life. That means the protection wanes off very quickly. It's only a matter of months, and that's why most of us, we've had these booster vaccines several times. And we aim to, with our vaccine, to have lesser administration of this. So less visits to hospital or doctor settings, and a stronger protection, essentially, of this vaccine.
Regarding your second asset, which is in breast cancer, obviously, there's a huge market there. What's the competitive landscape for you there?
Well, current standard of care is based on chemotherapy and monoclonal antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies alone generate more than $11 billion of sales annually. However, these therapies, they also come with some drawbacks, and our vaccine approach has the capability to overcome these drawbacks, especially the notion of resistance that can occur in breast cancer vaccine projects. We've seen very encouraging preclinical proof of concept that we can overcome resistance development in a breast cancer setting.
Mm-hmm. What are your main goals for the rest of 2023?
Really spending a lot of time on the breast cancer vaccine project. So we expect preclinical safety data to come up here towards the end of 2023. That's by far the most resources we spend on this.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Bent, and for answering these questions.
Thank you.